Hello, this is Storyteller Mitch. It's just you're just seeing a black screen because I am in my underwear wearing a house coat and everything, and I don't feel like getting dressed. Here's some more queer for you. We are on chapter 6. Thursday, Lee went to the races on the recommendation of Tom Weston. Weston was an amateur astrologer, and he assured Lee the signs were right. Lee lost 5 races and took a taxi back to the ship Ahoy. Mary and Allerton were sitting at the table with a Peruvian chess player. Allerton asked Lee to come over and sit down at the table. "Where's that phony whorecaster?" Lee said, looking around. "Tom give you a bump steer?" asked Allerton. "He did that." Mary left with the Peruvian. Lee finished his 3rd drink and turned to Allerton. "I figured to go down to South America soon," he said. "Why don't you come along? Won't cost you a cent. Perhaps not in money. I'm not a difficult man to get along with. We could reach a satisfactory agreement. What you got to lose? Independence? So what's going to cut in on your independence? You can lay all the women in South America if you want to. All I ask is to be nice to Papa, say twice a week. That isn't excessive, isn't it? Besides, I'll buy you a round-trip ticket so you can leave at your discretion." Allerton shrugged. "I'll think it over," he said. "This job runs 10 days more. I'll give you a definite answer when the job folds." "Your job?" Lee was about to say. "I'll give you 10 days' salary," he said. "All right." Allerton's newspaper job was temporary, and he was too lazy to hold a job in any case. Consequently, his answer meant no. Lee figured to talk him over in 10 days. Better not force the issue now, he thought. Allerton planned a 3-day trip to Morelia with his co-workers in the newspaper office. The night before he left, Lee was in a state of manic excitement. He collected a noisy table full of people. Allerton was playing chess with Mary, and Lee made all the noise he could. He kept his table laughing, but they all looked vaguely uneasy, as if they would prefer to be someplace else. They thought Lee was a little crazy, but just when he seemed on point of some scandalous excess of speech or behavior, he would check himself and say something completely banal. Lee leaped up to embrace the new arrival. Ricardo, amigo mio," he said. "Haven't seen you in a dog's age. Where have you been? Having a baby? Sit down on your ass, or what's left of it after 4 years in the Navy. What's troubling you, Richard? Is it women? I'm glad you came to me instead of those quacks on the top floor." At this point, Allerton and Mary left. After consulting for a moment in low tones, Lee looked after them in silence. "I'm playing to an empty house now," he thought, and ordered another rum and swallowed 4 Benzedrine tablets. Then he went into the head and smoked a roach of tea. "Now I will ravish my public," he thought. The busboy had caught a mouse and was holding it up by the tail. Lee pulled out an old-fashioned .22 revolver he sometimes carried. "Hold the son of a bitch out and I'll blast it," he said, striking a Napoleonic pose. The boy tried to string to the mouse's tail and held it out at arm's length. Lee fired from a distance of the 3 feet. His bullet tore the mouse's head off. "If you got any closer, the mouse would have clogged the muzzle," said Richard. Tom Weston came in. "Here comes the old whorecaster," Lee said. "That retrograde Saturn dragging your ass, man?" "My ass is dragging because I need a beer," said Weston. "Well, you've come to the right place. A beer for my astrologizing friend. What's that? I'm sorry, old man," Lee said, turning to Weston. "But the bartender says the signs aren't right to serve you a beer. You see, Venus is in the 69th house with a Randy Neptune, and he couldn't let you have a beer under such auspices." Lee washed down a small piece of opium with black coffee. Horace walked in and gave Lee his brief, cold nod. Lee rushed over and embraced him. "This thing is bigger than both of us, Horace," he said. "Why hide our love?" Horace thrust out his arms rigidly. "Knock it off," he said. "Knock it off." Just a Mexican abrazo, Horace. Custom of the country. Everyone does it down here. "I don't care what the custom is. Just keep away from me. Horace, why are you so cold?" Horace said, "Knock it off, will you?" and walked out. A little later, he came back and stood at the end of the bar drinking a beer. Weston and Al and Richard came over and stood with Lee. "We're with you, Bill," Weston said. "If he lays a finger on you, I'll break a beer bottle over his head." Lee did not want to push the routine past the joking stage. He said, "Oh, Horace is okay, I guess, but there's a limit on what I can stand still for. 2 years he hands me these curt nods. 2 years he walks into Lola's and looks around. Nothing in here but fags, he says, and goes out onto the street to drink his beer. Like I say, there is a limit." Allerton came back from his trip to Morlia, sullen and irritable. When Lee asked if he had a good trip, he muttered, "Oh, all right," and went in the other room to play chess with Mary. Lee felt a charge of anger pass through his body. "I'll make him pay for this somehow," he thought. Lee considered buying a half interest in the ship Ahoy. Allerton insisted on credit and at the ship Ahoy and owed 400 pesos. If Lee was half owner of the joint, Allerton would not be in a position to ignore him. Lee did not actually want retaliation. He felt a desperate need to maintain some special contract with Allerton. Lee managed to reestablish contact. One afternoon, Lee and Allerton went to visit Al Hyman, who was in the hospital with jaundice. On the way home, they stopped on the Bottoms Up for a cocktail. "What about this trip to South America?" Lee said abruptly. "Well, it's always nice to see places you haven't been before," said Allerton. "Can you leave any time?" "Any time." Next day, Lee started collecting the necessary visas and tickets. "Better buy some camping equipment here," he said. "We may have to trek back into the jungle to find the yog. When we get where the yog is, we'll dig a hip cat and ask him, 'Where can we store your yog?'" "How will you know where to look for the yog?" "I aim to find out in Bogota. A Colombian scientist who lives in Bogota isolated telepathine from Yagi. I think it's Yagi. We must find that scientist." "Suppose he won't talk?" "They all talk when Boris gets to work on them. You Boris?" "Certainly not. We pick up Boris in Panama. He did excellent work with the Reds in Barcelona and with the Gestapo in Poland. A talented man. All his work has the Boris touch, light but persuasive. A mild little fellow with spectacles. Looks like a bookkeeper. I met him with a Turkish bath in Budapest." A blond Mexican boy went by pushing a cart. "Jesus Christ," Lee said, his mouth dropping open. "One of them blonde-headed Mexicans. Tain't as if it was being queer, Allerton. After all, they's only Mexicans. Let's have a drink." They left by a bus a few days later. By the time they reached Panama City, Allerton was already complaining that Lee was too demanding in his desires. Otherwise, they got on very well. Now, while Lee could spend days and nights with the object of his attention, he felt relieved of all the gnawing emptiness of fear, and Allerton was a good traveling companion, sensible and calm. And the next part is chapter 7. Ciao.